Hi, I'm Brandon.
And Mom, thank you for joining us.
Yes, we always enjoy speaking with you here on Tansson TV Plus, and you'll know that we started off just over a year ago with our Tuesday TV discussions, but now Fridays are the new Tuesdays.
Yes, that is great. So it's going to be our Friday first episode events that'll happen every Friday now.
Yeah, and don't worry, we'll still have additional discussions that come up every once in a while, but I'm excited for us to start this new chapter of our journey with today's discussion of.
Scarecrow and Mrs. King.
Yes, I'm very excited for us to be discussing, this series and, of course, the first episode. And, of course, you can comment with us in the comments of this video, and tune into our discussion. And, Mom, we can dive right into it. And I hope you're doing well.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Brandon. But yes, Scarecrow and Mrs. King is a mystery slash well, sort of like a mystery show. It involves, and I'm just going to speak very generically. It involves a lady who was recruited some indirectly by a gentleman named Lee Stetson, and Lee Stetson works for the government, and he works for the government, and he does some investigations and things like that. And so one day they meet. She does a job for him unknowingly, and then they later become partners. So that, in essence, is the show. It takes place in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding areas around Washington, D.C.
Yes, and so, this episode came on October 3rd of 1983. And overall, within this first episode, I would say it's very much a traditional pilot episode.
It is. It is very so much a traditional pilot episode. I mean, everyone is introduced. We are given a lot of detail in regards to them personally. We get to see their lives, which is very nice. We get to see their lives in action and how they all correspond with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And to correct myself, I did mean, series premiere, but nevertheless, for this episode, I'd say that we get a lot of, intentional name dropping. So, hi, Amanda. And, it's like, oh, okay, this is Scarecrow, just call me Lee.
Yes, we do. We are introduced to Amanda very quickly. We know that she is a mother. I mean, that comes out very quickly. We know that she has two sons. Her mother lives with her, and her mother is a caretaker for the children. We learn that Amanda is divorced, and she's been divorced for a year. And we understand that she's dating a gentleman named Dean. I mean, that all comes out within the first 5 minutes. Lee takes a little longer, but we do learn that Lee is part of the government. We know that what he's doing is undercover, and that so much undercover that the building where he goes into is kind of a facade of a building. So we do know that these things are established very quickly within, like I said, the first 5 minutes. All of this takes place.
Yeah, and I will note, too, since you mentioned that, Amanda is dating this gentleman, Dean. Dean is rarely shown within this episode or the rest of the series for that matter. He seems to be, in fact, shown more in this episode than anything. We see sort of the back of him in the background. You can hear his voice on occasion, but he's really not really a part of the show. He's just a part of Mrs. King, who is relegated to the background.
Yeah, he is, and you're very right, Brandon. He is shown more in this first episode than any other episode on Scarecrow and Mrs. King. In fact, I think he kind of disappears somewhere. We're given a little storyline, but he, in essence, they just stop kind of talking about him, and that happens, I think, a little later in the first season, I believe.
Yeah, and since you were mentioning the other characters too, such as Lee Scarecrow's boss Billy and Francine, Billy's assistant, is that when we first see the agency, we get to see sort of the whole picture. So we get to see them walking into the facade of a building, going through it, and then the little go kart that they have, going through the building. And I feel like that's always something interesting with these first episodes, especially with drama shows. I know right now we're doing this show, which is of course kind of like a spy one, but last month we just did all these superhero ones. Is that oftentimes we see these ins and outs of the facility on these first episodes to sort of establish a little bit about it without having to verbally say it.
Yes, you're very true, and it does. It gives a very nice visual image of the episode, and kind of helps the viewer to know what's going on.
Yeah, but going into the main plot of the episode, we do have Mrs. Welch, the cooking lady that Amanda's mother, Dottie, is watching and learning how to cook with. And it's implied that I guess she doesn't regularly cook, but it doesn't seem like Mrs. King cooks much either, so I'm not sure who normally does the cooking there.
Yeah, I think it's later established in the show that the grandma kind of does quite a bit of the cooking, and Amanda does not. Oh, we also noticed, Brandon, to go into it, is that Mrs. King did not have a job either. They established that very early on that she was looking for a job.
Yes, and yeah, and also with that, it's noted a few times, from both Mrs. King and from Scarecrow, that they may not 100%, be familiar with the area in the sense that Mrs. King, oftentimes was asking Lee in this episode, do you have a place to go like for Thanksgiving? Do you know any other people in this area? Whereas, Mrs. King's still trying to find her footing, even though it also is implied that Mrs. King's been there for a while, so I'm not sure how long a while really is.
Yeah, yeah, very true. You could tell that Lee does not indicate that he has family. And I'll admit to the honest that we have seen quite a few episodes. We're on season two, and watching, and I think we're midway through season two and watching the episodes. And so I don't think at this point that we have heard much, if anything, about Lee's family. I think we just kind of know that Lee's single. That's about as much as we know.
Yeah, that's quite true. But, like I said, but going into the episode, though, so was Amanda's mom is fascinated by this Mrs. Welch lady on TV who does cooking and is trying to convince Amanda to have her sign up for private lessons.
Yeah, and then we find out, to make a correlation, we have Francine, who works at the agency, who is also taking lessons from this Mrs. Welch also. And we later learn that Mrs. Welch, in fact, is not who she seems to be.
Yes, that is quite true. And can we actually dive into a little bit as to how Scarecrow and Mrs. King truly met within this episode?
Yeah, Scarecrow was kind of running with a package in his hand, and as he was running, he was at the train station, and Amanda was there to drop off Dean at the train station. She was underdressed. She had on pajamas, but she had on a jacket. And she was merely there just to drop off Dean. Dean gets on the train, and Scarecrow comes up behind her and says, I need for you to do me a favor. I need help. And she, of course, says no initially. And then he says, please, I really need help. And she says, okay, what do you need? And he asks her to give this package to someone in a red hat. She goes on the train, and of course, every gentleman there was wearing a red hat. And so that is how Mrs. King ended up with the package, because she didn't know who to give the package to.
Yeah, and she ended up, like we said, keeping it, and and we learned a little bit through the interactions of Amanda and Lee, and a part of it is that Mrs. King and her, I believe, oldest son Philip, have a very good memory, and so her son had actually read the package and the note that was inside of it that overall helped tie this whole episode together.
Yeah, and then Amanda was she was smart enough to know that her mother had been watching these cooking episodes, and so she was able to put two and two together when she heard the names that her son listed for her on this particular note.
Yes, and so we find out that Mrs. Welch, the cooking lady, was indeed the bad guy for this episode, or at least a part of a bigger crime ring, and so it's overall interesting. And I really like the pacing, I think, of this episode and how it all sort of comes to be.
Yeah, it was a very nice pacing, and it was a quick episode to watch. I mean, it was 40 plus minutes. However, it didn't seem like 40 minutes, or at least to me, it didn't seem like that. And so it was nicely paced. They spoke slow enough. The storyline was slow enough for, I think, the average viewer to understand what is going on in the episode. And sometimes that's the problem when you have hour-long shows. Sometimes they go really quickly, or it goes really slow. This time, the pace was just right, so that the viewer did understand what was going on.
Yes, and oftentimes, as we've noticed, especially over this last month, is that for drama shows, a lot of times you have, you know, extensive pilot episodes or first episodes of series premieres that, that seem to just sort of drag on or act as a TV movie. And I'm very glad that this one is just a regular episode titled The First Time.
Yes, very nice, very nicely done.
Yeah, and I will say that music seems to, I mean, to be a driving force within not necessarily the storyline, but rather the composition of the episode, especially with the theme song.
Yeah, it did. I've always loved the theme song, Brandon. I think I've told you before well, I know I've told you before. When I was overseas when Scarecrow and Mrs. King first came on, and so I only saw the first season because when I was overseas in 19, in '83 when the show premiered, they only showed the first season, so I never saw the other seasons afterwards. And when I came back to the States, it was kind of going off. So it was nice to. It's been nice to go back and watch these episodes and then to see the episodes that I've never seen before.
So truly, you've seen the beginning and the end. You've bookended it.
Yeah, I bookended it. I sure did.
Yeah, well, I will say so. Outside of when you saw it when you're younger, so let us take a moment to let those viewing know how much we know of the series. I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, how much I know of the series is really what I'm kind of watching now. Is that I know I think it went off in '86 or '87. Brandon, I'll let you mention that. But but yes, what I know of the series is really, in essence, that is kind of a crime show, but yet, like you said, a spy show at the same time. Scarecrow and Mrs. King work together as partners. I know that Amanda started off as someone who was just there to help, and then later on to become a she played a larger role and worked with Lee on a regular basis. Now, Francine was not exactly happy with that, but Billy, the boss, seemed to really enjoy Amanda. I think the banter between Lee and Amanda is wonderful. They do a really nice job of the bantering back and forth, and Amanda's able to solve quite a few of the mysteries, and just her instincts kind of helps her there.
Yes, definitely. And yes, it did go off in 1987. And yeah, and for me, of course, similar to you, I am watching it for myself the first time. And we're, like I said, in the middle of season two. And the question, of course, comes to would we continue watching or watch this first episode again?
Yeah, well, I've seen this first episode about 3 or 4 times now, so yes, I guess I can't watch it again. But yes, I will continue watching because I do want to get to the end. I know we talk about some of these shows and we don't know whether or not we'll make it to the end. This one, I am going to make it to the end and see how everything kind of concludes together.
Yes, definitely. And I'm excited to see that as well. Of course, like I said, we are 33 episodes into the series, so of the 88. So I'm hoping that we can make it there. Right now we're watching on Tubi where you can watch it for free. So if anyone wants to tune in for the first time, this is a great time to do so.
Yeah, please do and watch it with us, and let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are about the show.
Yeah, and I know we touched on the theme, but Mom, overall, what are your thoughts of the theme song? And like, I don't know, I feel like the musical I feel like the musical selection and the different tones, I think, really convey the different characters within the song. What about you?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely love the theme song for here. It's all instrumental, but I think it's done very well. You're right. The lighthearted part comes with Amanda and it comes with her children as they show her. And one of the things we didn't talk about either were her children. But to go back to the theme song, and then at some point in time when we get to Francine, there's a little bit of a I don't want to say update, but more of a mysterious type of part of the song. And so, which makes you wonder, what is it about Francine? What is her past? What is her role in the show? So, yes. And so far, that really has not been explored in the show so far in the episodes that we've seen. Your thoughts about the song, Brandon?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And yeah, that part about Francine, when you see, her name, rather the actress's name, the just the tone of the theme song. If you haven't, listened to it, you should definitely tune in to hear what we're speaking about. But yeah, the tone of the song just shifts, for each of the actors as they appear, but and are credited. But for the one for Francine, it just is a little ominous. And so I've always wondered from the very beginning, what's up with her. And we do sort of see in this episode that, although of course she's with the good guys, so to speak, that her knowledge is the one that led indirectly to the killings of the agents. So
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really kind of looking forward to the episode that kind of gives the background of Francine, if we're even given that information.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm very excited, to continue tuning into Scarecrow and Mrs. King. And Mom, I know that we're going to dive a little bit more into this genre coming up.
Yeah, yes, we are. Just so the audience to know, we're going to look at some more of the spy shows that are out there, and then, or I should say, some of the TV crime dramas. So we're going to look at that this month, and so you'll see that on the Fridays in the month of August.
Yes, we're very excited for this and to, once again be back here with weekly episodes and of course on Fridays. And I'm very excited to see like the different genres that we're able to do over the course of this year and with this new channel.
Yep, so am I. And just so our audience will know, we're trying to pick shows that are kind of from all over the place, from going back a little bit to the modern day.
Yeah, so we're excited to see, from older shows to new shows, overall what we come up with, and and overall how these shows come to play, especially these first episodes, because truly, the first moment we get to explore many of these characters, and we're excited to explore them with you.
Yep, we're so excited too. I did want to mention one last thing about Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and that's with the children. One of the things that I really liked about the show was the fact that they did incorporate the children in the show, and even though they may not be seen all the time, they do a good job of having Amanda refer to her children. They're in the theme song, so and they're a part of Amanda's life, and I think that's very important to show that Amanda is a mother, and they do a really good job of making sure that the audience does know that she's a mother and she does a lot with her children, and so does the grandmother.
Yeah, that is definitely a major part of the show, and I'm love that how they incorporate it within this first episode, and I do hope that as we continue seeing this going through the series, that we see more of the children, because I'd love to learn more about them within the series.
Yes, same here. Same here. So we appreciate everyone coming and watching with us today.
Yes, we definitely appreciate it. And I was just going through my notes a little bit just to see if there was anything else I wanted to bring up. And I think for the most part that we have hit it. I mean, like I said, we've definitely spoken a lot about, like I said, our two main characters alongside Mrs. King's family. And so I look forward to continuing tuning in. And like I said, this was Scarecrow and Mrs. King from Shoot the Moon Enterprises, B&E Enterprises, and Warner Bros. Television. And this right here is our discussion from Tansson TV Plus.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Bye bye.
We'll see you next time.